Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. To fellow presenters and participants of ISRUPIC 2020, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. As you can see, the title of my presentation is A Historical Perspective on University-Community Relations in Times of Pandemic. So just like other presenters in this seminar, I'll be talking about university-community relations. But in this presentation, I'll be mainly focusing on the historical dimension of this relation. As we all know, university education has a long history. We can trace the emergence of the first universities back to the 9th or 10th centuries in the case of the Muslim world, and 13th century in the case of Europe. So university education has a history of more than 1,000 years. And one of the running themes in this long history of university education is, of course, the relations between universities and communities. In European and American historical writing or historiography, there has been numerous discussion on university-community relation, and this is sometimes expressed through the term town and gown relations. This term, town and gown, is interesting as it carries with it a strong historical connotation. Town here represents the community sides of the relations, and that is understandable because universities were traditionally located in towns and cities, and therefore were directly in contact with the inhabitants and the populations of the cities and towns. While the word gown here represents the university side of the relations, as many professors and students of universities in those days, it has been their custom to wear gowns or robes that distinguish them in appearance from other citizens and town people. So town and gown, this term becomes the standard term in many historical writings that deals with university-community relations in the West. It is, however, important to understand that throughout this long history of university education, the nature of university-community relations did not remain the same. The forms of these relations in the past obviously were in many respects different from what we have now. And these changes in the nature of the relations were the results of many different and complex factors. And I do not have time to go into details on these factors, but it is sufficient for me here to highlight one of them, namely the changing function, definition, and social character of the universities over time. That itself is one of the principal driving forces behind the changing nature of university-community relations. For instance, if you talk about universities in the Middle Ages, that means universities that existed in maybe 400 years ago, or 700 years ago, or 900 years ago. If you look at their curriculums, or their, we can say, to use modern term, academic programs, these universities, they only offer degrees in maybe 3 or 4 areas of knowledge, and the prominent ones are theology, law, and medicine. So these are like the 3 most popular disciplines in medieval European universities. And it means, therefore, that other forms of knowledge or skills are considered, the teaching of these other forms of knowledge or skills are considered beyond the purview of university education. And of course, there must be reasons why this was the case. The nature of the curriculum at that time actually primarily reflects the intentions and the interests of the patrons of the institutions or their founders, and most of these founders uh, were were elite members of the society. They were kings or princes of this or that kingdoms, or sometimes bishops of, of the church. So they somehow reflect the interest of these sections of the populations. Um, However, as time changed, university curriculum also evolved. For instance, in the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution, more and more universities were increasingly under pressure to include courses like engineering and applied sciences. So new universities that were founded in the century, one can see that they were more biased towards technical education, as many of them were founded by municipal authorities and government, and they were founded in order to serve the industrial needs of their cities and towns. So, for instance, in Manchester, one of the most important institutions that was established during the Industrial Revolution, the period of the Industrial Revolution, was Owens College, which is a technical college. And this was a municipal foundation. That means it was established by the municipal authority, and it was intended to serve the economic needs of the of the city. And Manchester was one of the principal industrial cities in England. So it was this Owen College that would later evolve into what we now call Manchester University. So you can find that this new university, they were very different in terms of functions and roles if you compare them to the universities before that. However, of course, in general, the university-community relations was highly complex and dynamic. More importantly, one has to remember that the relations were not always cordial or harmonious. In pre-modern Europe, for instance, there were many town and gown hostilities, some of which culminated into violent confrontations most of the time between students and town people. But I think there is a deeper issue that we should consider when thinking about university-community relations in the past, and that is on how, in certain historical and cultural contexts, these relations were much more fluid and elusive than they are now. And it is because higher education in the past was a less formalized and institutionalized activity than what it is now. For instance, in the pre-modern Muslim world, the institution itself, be it a college or madrasa or university, is not as important as the concrete and highly personalized relationship between professor and their students. Madrasa or university is merely a building where learning takes place. Authorities in knowledge and learning were much more conceived in personal rather than institutional terms. So even though we know that the practice of conferring degrees has started since the early history of Islamic education, ijazah, that was never done by the institution itself, rather by the individual professors. So institution itself does or did not confer or grant degrees to their students. Rather, that was the prerogative of the individual professors. The relationship between professors, students, and the institutions were much more fluid than what we have now. It is not uncommon, for instance, for a university professor or a madrasa teacher to hold multiple posts in different colleges. Makdisi, in his book, Josh Makdisi, in his famous work, The Rise of Colleges, mentions one Hanafi jurist who held 12 different positions at various colleges. And therefore, in a context like this, one can imagine that what really mattered is one's personal authority and expertise rather than one's institutional affiliation. In such a context as well, relations with the community was more understood in terms of his personal individual capacity as a scholar rather than in terms of his institution. Scholars' community relations rather than university-community relations, therefore might be one of the sensible ways of conceiving the problem or potentiality of, their relations to the wider public. This shows to some extent how our theme, university-community relation, is itself a reflection of our historical condition, as we live in the time when higher education is a much more formalized and institutionalized business. So I think I would like to end with that point, and I think I'm looking forward for discussion during the seminar. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal, we are on the pandemic situation now, but pandemic still give us many benefits. So Allah says that inna ma'al usri yusran. So no, we get the pandemic has revealed many hidden facts that we know, and the study we want to present here is to uncover some hidden realities that exist in modern society, which are revealed along with the emergence of this COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the confusion of information, spreading of hoax, people expressing opinions, even offering solution without authority and expertise, have encountered during the outbreak period. Those situations occur in almost all fields, in health field, in public policy, in social field, and psychology, as well as religion. So the pandemic has made us aware that in the area of information overflow now, humans are increasingly forgetting, even more ignorant of their standing, each of them. This is what Tom Nichols say in his great book, The Death of Expertise, which was published on 2017. How unlimited information is making us dumber and dumber and dumber. Feeling that they have access to enough information, so every human, every single person feels free to speak, free to write anything about what he knows or what he or she knows, what they actually doubts, or even what they doesn't understand at all. So they speak what they do not understand. This is not Islamic actually, because Allah says that وَلَا تَكْفُوا مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ. You cannot say, you cannot have opinion about something you do not understand. But the background of the situation is the speed of internet. The speed of internet has also made data misdirection so prevalent. Nichols adopted the Sturgeon's law that 90% of everything in the cyberspace, the context of cyberspace, Nichols put it in the context of cyberspace, is trash. In turn, Hawke says, wild assumption and speculation replace established science. Expertise was denied. The internet also contains what we say as emotional games. People can be very violent in debates and differences. We saw that as a daily view in today's internet world, to look people defending desperately for an opinion that actually that opinion still needs verification. The excessive criticism flavored ad hominem, attacking the person, and humiliation have also become daily consumption in our digital world. But the internet is not the only one, it's not the only determinant. Humans have a weakness in their hearts and minds too. It is called confirmation bias. So The internet is one factor, but we have the second factor, which is the internal factor of human that we name as confirmation bias. Not everyone really likes the truth. Not everyone really likes the truth. Most are more interested in justification of what they think as the truth. People prefer to receive information that confirms exactly what they already believe. So, a healthy debate, as well as an argument of data and uh, argumentation, actually doesn't really work. So, you do not have the real debates actually. Information system algorithm then provide the fertilizer for these confirmation biases. With certain formula and certain calculations, a person will continue to be fed by the internet with homogeneous information that he or she like to. Uh, uh, they will provide by the internet homogeneous information that he likes, that he interests, or he believes. And it becomes spilling over, bigger, bigger, and bigger. Fanaticism tends to become strengthened. Then, naturally, strong segregation and noisy quarrel that cannot be breached took place amongst the netizen. And at the same time, the experts are immersed in the world of their own. They become elite who are so difficult to be socially accessed, and they have crucial problem in form of lack of communication, especially public communication. They use high form of language, academic language, which the layman is difficult to understand. So eventually, they are defeated by fake scientists, and pseudo experts who have better communication. In the end, the original scientific authorities were marginalized and never become a reference. All of their opinions, analyses, and findings become objects of public cynicism. The public becomes cynical of them. Uh, a study by Hee Jong-yu from Korea, he's a Korean psychiatrist, has interesting and complementary similar analysis with the Nichols have. What Nichols has. According to you, political factors also played a role in creating this situation. Cynicism and resentment towards power, especially those adhering to unilateral communication, make people yearn for egalitarianism, which led them to desire to implement democratization in all fields. The academic fields cannot be democratized. We cannot put the ballot to know the truth, the real truth. So the truth is not a social construction. I think the truth is the truth. So democracy is not a way to get the truth. Then knowledge and expertise are assessed by indicators of taste. Even scientific truth, if possible, will be determined by voting or by contesting the numbers of followers. This is the time when the culture of knowledge evaporated. So the culture of knowledge evaporates. The era in which academic manners disappeared. This is the era when academic manners disappeared. Humans can no longer measure themselves. Instead, they feel entitled to respond to all lines and areas of life. That's all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys. Thank you for having me at this Hubit 2020. Let me introduce myself. My name is Baru Hidayat, and my co-author Mr. Yanwar Arif. I would like to present our newspaper that title Hypnotherapy with Islamic Suggestion to OCD and Depression as the impact of COVID-19. As we know that spread of the coronavirus disease or COVID-19 around the world has caused many extraordinary public health crises. Until right now, there is no effective treatment or vaccine to cure COVID-19. The spread of COVID-19 can cause many mental and psychosocial health problems for community and individuals. This pandemic situation can lead to self-stigma or public stigma which affect the mental health situation in community. The other impact of COVID-19 outbreak also affect the global economic recession and increase in unemployment or many people lost their job. In a recent survey from China, about 54% of respondents rate the COVID-19 outbreak as having moderate or severe negative psychological impacts. COVID-19, which has a pandemic status, can trigger fear, and this pandemic should make us understanding of mental health is needed in the community. The other result of the study from England showed that the level of anxiety, depression, and trauma symptoms were higher in British adults than teenagers in 18 years old. And then the other result of study indicate that the government needs to pay attention. The government should face and deal with the COVID-19 affect the mental health issue. For example, depression and anxiety problem in the community. In individual case, the COVID-19 outbreak can trigger depression and OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder problem. This symptom or this syndrome, this depression and OCD syndrome, is the main object in our paper, in our study in this research. So the purpose of the research to describe the technique, the effectiveness of hypnotherapy with Islamic suggestion to the subject which get depression and OCD which are triggered by the COVID-19 outbreak. So just like as I have explained before, the impact of COVID-19 is many deaths, and then physical health problems, economic recession, people lost their job, unemployment. But the main object in our paper, in our research, is psychological problem for individual being uh, depression and OCD in our main focus in this study. We found a subject that he get the symptoms. First, he have talks about suicide, and then he have symptoms self-blaming, insomnia, repeat doubt, behavior. For example, he repeat voodoo or ablution, and repeat sola until 2 or 4 times. He repeat the behavior, though, so that the subject can be classified as OCD symptom patients. And then the subject show symptom about the other behavior. He has no passion for routine activities. All of the symptom has been going on for 3 months. Our study design, we are using a single subject design test study. So we use A1 and B and A2 as the form of single subject design. This, this study was divided into 3 phases over 4 weeks period. Within the first week, the assessment will be using interview technique, IQ test, and personality test of the outcome measure of were performed as the first stage of phase A1. During the following of 4 weeks or the second phase, or phase B, the subject get clinical hypnotherapy treatment by using Islamic suggestion. An immediate effect of the intervention was assessed. We we have documented the end of each week. The last 3 weeks consist of the post-intervention phase or the third phase, phase A2, during which the short-term effects of the intervention were assessed once a week. And then the subject were assessed and treated by the same psychologists or the same hypnotherapists, but the assessment process handled by two psychologists. For the finding and the result of this study show that the hypnotherapy with Islamic suggestion effective reduced repeat doubt as OCD symptoms. And then hypnotherapy with Islamic suggestion effective reduced self-blaming at our subject, increasing passion for routine activity. But the most important thing is our subject uh, successfully reduced his talk about suicide, his talk about killing himself. It gone. It very effective, reduce and cure his talk about suicide. Meanwhile, the other situation for our subject uh, still get insomnia symptom, but the subject trying to manage not to play his smartphone using at night because when interview process, I asked the subject, did he using his smartphone before the bedtime? Yes, he said yes. Oh, there is the problem. You get insomnia symptom not only because you're depression or OCD situation, but your habit using smartphone at night before bedtime. So I asked him to cut or to manage not using his smartphone at night, especially before bedtime. Okay, the conclusion of our paper is that depression and OCD symptoms effectively reduce in different ways, and the study suggests that hypnotherapy with Islamic suggestion is a possible method for use in the future of Islamic psychotherapy approach. Because many hypnotherapy practitioners, especially Muslim practitioners, end up using uh, Islamic value as the suggestion in hypnosis process. So yeah, I think we must change our mind to integrate scientific approachment and Islamic approachment as integrate uh, uh, psychotherapy process in hypnosis, uh, especially for depression and OCD symptoms. Yeah, I do believe it will work through, especially to the subject of our Muslim clients. Okay, guys, thank you for your time and attention. Uh, have a good day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. I am Dr. Nur Surya binti Muhammad Noor from Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion at IUM. My topic is approaches in dealing with the impact of COVID-19 pandemic from Islamic and Buddhist perspectives. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to a dramatic loss of humans' life worldwide and presents unexpected challenges to people's livelihood, their health, and their social lives. A study on psychological distress and coronavirus fears in the US shows that the COVID-19 pandemic is associated with high level of psychological distress, including depression, anxiety, and grief. The aims of this paper are to identify the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health issues and to highlight approaches in dealing with the impact of the pandemic from Islamic and Buddhist perspectives. A library research is used as the method of this study. We can see here physical and mental health impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Let's take a look on the fourth wave here. Among the impacts are psychic trauma, mental illness, economic injury, and burnout. Impact on mental health issues over the past few months, there are increasing mental health issues such as stress or anxiety among the general populations, elderly children, migrant workers, and healthcare professionals other than the patients with COVID-19 infections. The lockdown also causes negative mental health outcomes like anxiety state and insecurity regarding the future. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, said that even when the pandemic is brought under control, grief, anxiety, and depressions will continue to affect people and communities. So we cannot escape from the overwhelming impact of COVID-19 on mental health, and we have to deal with it. So the question is how and what are the approaches? The answer is religious approaches from Islam and also Buddhism. So the first approach from Islamic perspective is coping with the negative life events. Negative life events are one of the major factors for depression. Islam plays an important role in helping Muslims to cope with negative life events, which help them in both preventions and treatments of depressions. Muslims are not superhuman. However, if one experiences negative feelings, he is encouraged to resist them with positive thought and action if possible. As Allah said in the Quran, so verily with every difficulty there is relief, verily with every difficulty there is relief. Islam also encourages people to stay hopeful, even if someone has committed the worst sin or faced the most troublesome life events, as there is always God's mercy. As Allah said in the Quran, Surah number 12, verse 87. Number 2, coping with grief, practice sabar and also rida. Muslims believe that all suffering, life, death, joy, and happiness are derived from Allah, and He is the one who gives us strength to survive. They believe that any loss or deprivations experience is a form of a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his slave of how he will stand this suffering with patience and full trust in his mercy. These beliefs usually help to comfort and aid the healing process. For example, in accepting grief and loss, the relatives of the deceased person are urged to be patient or sabar and accept test from Allah or Rida. Allah said in the Quran, be sure we shall test you with something of fear and hunger, some loss in goods, lives, and the fruits of your toil, but give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere, who say when afflicted with calamity, to Allah we belong and to Him is our return. Prophet Muhammad SAW also mentions about people who have passion in accepting God's decree will be given a reward from Him. However, Muslims are not immune against the feeling of grief. It is permissible to cry and express grief over the death of a loved one. For instance, when Prophet's son Ibrahim passed away, the Prophet said, "We are very sad for your death, O Ibrahim." Islam also encouraged Muslims to talk about and remember their loved one and recall the good deeds of their life. Prophet Muhammad himself, he never forgot his wife Khadijah, even years after she passed away. People in grief may have negative thoughts such as, why is this happening to me? Why not someone else? Why did Allah choose me for this unbearable trial? So we have to be patient and accept the test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dealing with all these negative thoughts. And the third approach is coping with anxiety. People with anxiety may have this kind of feeling such as, I feel that I am no longer able to cope. Life is too difficult for me. No one is there for me. It can be helpful for those who are suffering to recall that Allah is always there and can assist those who place their trust in Him. Muslims should remember God in times of suffering and pain and have faith and hope in His mercy and compassion to ease the suffering. Allah said in the Quran, and when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. Indeed, Allah loves those who rely upon Him. And we also have to count how much God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has blessed us and trying to focus on what we have and not what we are lacking. This can be considered as muhasabatun nafs. As Prophet Muhammad said, look at those who are less fortunate than yourself, not at those who are better off than yourself, so that you will not belittle the blessings that Allah has bestowed upon you. And Muslim must learn from Prophet Muhammad's teaching. Do not regret for things that have happened in the past, which one cannot go back and change, and not to worry about what happened in the future because it is useless. The person should think about the present, focusing his energy on doing his best today and helps him to forget his worries and regrets. Next is approaches from a Buddhist perspective. Number one is acknowledging the dukkha. In Sutta Pitaka, Buddha said all beings are subject to dukkha. First of the Fourth Noble Truth, Buddha mentioned what is dukkha. Dukkha is suffering, unsatisfactory, pain, anxiety, grief and fear, including physical and mental suffering such as birth, decay, disease, death, to be separated from pleasant and to be united with the unpleasant. Buddhist teachings state that suffering, illness, and death are to be expected, understood, and acknowledged. The nature of reality is affirmed in a short chant: I am subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death. This chant serves to remind people that fear and uncertainty are natural to ordinary life. Instead of reacting with fear, Buddhist teachers advise working with fear. One of the monks said, when we fight the world, we have what is called suffering, but the more we accept the world, the more we can actually enjoy the world. Second is transforming, or part of this is transforming the fear. So one of the Buddhist monk in his book mentions 5 steps how a person is able to transform the fear. Number one, recognize the fear, to become one with the fear, to calm the fear, to release the fear, to let it go, and to transform the fear. Second is cultivating compassion. Buddhist teachers believe that 4 attitudes, including loving kindness, compassion, joy, and calmness, can replace anxious and fearful state of mind. When emotions around fear or anxiety become too strong, Buddhist teachers say that one should recall example of compassion, kindness, and empathy. Compassion is important even as we maintain distance. One of the Buddhist teachers advises that this could be a time for all to take care of their relationships. Next is dealing with isolation. This could be done through conversation with our loved one and also through meditation practice. As meditators breathe in, they should acknowledge the suffering and anxiety everyone feels, and while breathing out, wish everyone peace and well-being. And also to use this time to reflect. Buddhist teachers argue that times of uncertainty can be good opportunity for putting these teachings into practice. Individual can transform disappointment with the current moment into motivations to change one's life and perspective on the world. If one reframes obstacle as part of the spiritual path, one can use to make a commitment to living a more spiritual life. And they also say that isolations in the home is an opportunity to reflect. And last but not least, understanding our interconnection. Buddhist doctrine recognizes an interconnection between everything. The pandemic is a moment to see this more clearly. With every action someone takes for self-care, such as washing one's hands, they are also helping to protect others. Our survival depends on one another, and when we feel a sense of responsibility toward everyone, we understand the concept of interconnection as a wise truth. Buddha said, protecting oneself, one protect others, protecting others, one protect oneself. As the conclusions, the findings indicate that COVID-19 pandemic give impact to mental health conditions such as grief, anxiety, and depressions, and there are several approaches in dealing with the impact of COVID-19 pandemic from both Islamic and Buddhist perspective. With that, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum